Guys, I got to play Digimon Story Time Stranger early at PAX because I got invited to attend with some creator friends, and I have a confession. This is like the first Digimon game I played in like decades. So here are the impressions of someone who has a lot of nostalgia for the show, but basically hasn't played a Digimon game like ever. And I'll be honest with you, this game took me completely by surprise. So shout out to Bandai Namco for giving me this opportunity. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of retro games with a major dose of RPGs and nostalgia, then why don't you lure that subscribe button with some old school Digimon nostalgic marketing and then slap it in the face with an experience it did not expect. Also, don't forget to hit that like button and hit that notification bell. All right, let's get into it. The marketing for this game is what got me interested to begin with, and when I was told by Avenger Mags that it's going to be a kind of Digimon persona, well, that got my attention. So I'm really glad I got a chance to check this one out. Shoutouts to Mags, and if you haven't seen her chatting with us on the Level Up Legacy podcast, go check that out. What are you doing? All right, so the first thing they did when I came in is they sat me down, set me up, and they handed me an Xbox controller. And the first thing I did was, ew. Has anybody got a PS5 controller around here? Haha, just kidding, Xbox is fine. For the first part of this demo, I had the chance to start the game from the very beginning in order to get a feel for the mechanics before diving into part 2, which of course we'll get to. Right out of the gate, I got to pick my character, and then I was thrown into a theater where I was told to take a seat because the story about the natural laws of the world was about to begin. Xenoblade 3, is that you? Then there was this sick Agent Alpha anime intro sequence that had all these mythological creatures, like the Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot, actually being Digimon? Like, okay, Bandai, you have my attention. I hadn't even started the game yet, and I was already like, this is sick! And from there, we jumped to the protagonist, and I got to talk to this mysterious holographic operator that told me our little secret organization may have been overdoing it since this was now an anime. And honestly, that's so freaking cool. Like, I love the meta here. Now, I'll be honest with you, like I said, I haven't played anything prior to this, so I have no idea if this is a sequel or something like that. So when Operator Lady asked me if I was aware of the phenomenon of the city, I asked who she was again, to which I was info-slapped because I should know these things apparently, and that she relays orders from HQ and I get to do all the hard work. Fair enough. Next was finding out what handling the investigation in the field meant in this particular case, and I would not be disappointed as an OG Digimon fan. As a little background for you, I was big into the big three when I was a kid, or at least that's what I like to call them. Pokemon, Digimon, and Monster Rancher. For Digimon, I went hard on the first like 2 or 3 seasons. I had Digimon cards, I had those Digivice Tamagotchi things, the first gen, and there was this really cool red one, I think it was from the 2nd or 3rd season, as well as a bunch of other cool stuff. Garurumon, Greymon, Angemon, all the classics still hit that nostalgia bone for me. So what happened in the next segment totally made my heart race. After some further discussion with Operator Lady, I got to run through the streets of Shinjuku to the first objective point. And in this setting, it definitely felt Persona-like. I had a more limited time, so I checked out some of the menus, read some of the tutorials, and just headed straight to the place I needed to go, which was this massive construction site where something was happening. There was this big commotion, and the Operator Lady let me know that the reason that we could feel the fear and the anger of the crowd was because studies showed that there is this odd correlation between the frequency of these anomalies and social unrest, and that these anomalies were increasing exponentially, which happens to be the kind of occurrence that can lead to the total collapse of society. You know, no big deal. So this isn't your typical bad team does bad things for stupid reasons, like a Pokemon game. This immediately gives you the sense that there are real stakes in this story. It's like the grown-up version of this era of anime, and I was totally here for it. After sneaking around the crowd and getting into the building area, the game really kicked in. The first objective was to meet with someone who was requesting aid in the vicinity, but in order to get there, I needed my first Digimon. This game has some really cool explanations for Digimon, like these phase electron life forms, and then you get straight into it. Now, like Pokemon, you get to choose from 3 starters. They had Patamon, Demidevimon, or Gomamon, which was absolutely amazing, since these are some of the epic Gen 1 Digimon, but I mean, of course, I had to go with Patamon, because like, Angemon was one of the coolest Digimon back in the day. Each Digimon has stats, traits, attribute resistance, elemental resistance, special skills, and attachment skills. And this was super cool because as a Pokemon player, much of this felt very familiar while having a bit more complexity to it. When I was choosing, I also saw at the very top right that Patamon was level 1 of 25, which seemed to indicate that it would Digivolve possibly permanently, but more importantly, that you could max out stats before Digivolving. I was getting some serious Fire Emblem vibes here, and I'm very excited. In the first battle, you get this cool animation of the Digivice becoming like this gun-like thing that fired in Patamon to battle, and then in battle, you can speed up the game, you can do auto battle, and of course, you can choose from things like attack, items, guard, or skills. Patamon had this air shot skill equipped, so I could use that and see if it gave me an advantage against the Digimon I was fighting. To the right, I could also see turn order, which immediately makes me think that we're going to learn skills that can impact that turn order in time, similar to something like Final Fantasy X, for example. And after a few battles, we got to learn about the Digi Attack, which allows you to get a preemptive strike against hostile Digimon and or destroy or activate objects outside of battle. So in my case, it could just take out most of the Digimon around here since Patamon was strong enough to one-shot them. And this kind of thing is super nice because what it's going to mean is that grinding is rewarded with a faster pace of gameplay. And considering how much I enjoy grinding in these games, that'll be a huge quality of life feature from other JRPGs out there. And at this point, I already felt like they had sort of lovingly crafted this battle system. They were considering all the pros and cons of a monster catching type game and gave us something that feels smooth and refined. And then they did something I was not expecting at all. They made Metal Greymon, one of my favorite classics, freaking terrifying. This dude pops out of the wall, his eye turns red, and starts chasing you down like a lion who hasn't been fed in weeks. Initially, he ran me over and I died. And I was kind of freaking out a little bit. But I got to do it again, and I went from, Metal Greymon, my man, to, hey, what are you doing? This crazy thing tries smashing me and then fires his giant metal claws at me. Like, this dude is gonna kill me. If I had any assumptions about this game, that it would be some happy-go-lucky Pokemon-like monster-catching game, they were dashed at this point. And then I met this woman who was over here telling me about a war, and it's about to break out, and we need to get to the top of the government building. Even Operator Lady was like, oh, this girl's a bit wild. Well, let's just go with it for now. Anyway, we moved forward, and lo and behold, evil Metal Greymon was back. But this time, we were defended by Omnimon, who is the fusion of War Greymon and Metal Garurumon, which was so sick. This game, comes out swinging, and for someone like me who enjoyed the original Digimon, this was so cool. What a way to start. The music kicked in, and the battle started. Little Patamon did his best to do damage and not die, but it was, of course, Omnimon with his transcendent sword that ultimately took Metal Greymon down. And this was all just the intro. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know what I was expecting coming into this, but it wasn't this. Following this turn of insane events, we next entered the government building for the sort of next part of round 1. I learned about what is essentially the catching mechanic in this game, and I thought this was way cooler than your typical, throw a ball and have a chance of catching something. In this game, each time you defeat a Digimon, you increase its scan rate. What this does is it allows you to basically create the Digimon and then use it for yourself. But the scan rate can increase up to 200% based on how many of these you've actually taken down, which leads to higher talent points and max HP. And I loved this. I know I'm making a lot of Pokemon comparisons here, but that's where my brain was when I was playing this game. And in Pokemon, catching and stat manipulation can be fun, especially in the newer games where it's more accessible, but it can be a grind, and it's not always clear if you have the best Pokemon, what its hidden stats are, etc. Whereas this mechanic totally simplifies this whole process significantly. You put in the work, get to 200%, and you get yourself a better Digimon. And this made me even more excited about all the Digimon you could find even in this particular place. The first Digimon you convert is Koromon, who eventually becomes Agumon, Greymon, etc. Once you get more Digimon on board, you can have a party of 3 Digimon to fight for you, which starts to bring in some more of that sweet turn-based strategy. Now, One of the things I found out about running around was that if you stand still, you enter into regeneration mode and your Digimon heal. Again, I don't know if this is a staple part of the series already, but when it comes to monster catching JRPGs in general, this is so nice. It not only simplifies healing, but it encourages the player to take more risks in battle, making the battles themselves far more interesting. Now, I was having a grand old time running around and finding new Digimon when I stumbled upon this massive Chaosdramon that absolutely wiped the floor with me. I obviously had to run away, but that immediately made me wonder if we're going to be able to travel back to some of these areas when we're more prepared so that we can take on some of these bigger Digimon and scan them. And that makes old Game Breaker Brandon very excited. After heading further in, breaking some walls, finding some treasure chests, all of very fun map design and exploration incentive, this giant Digimon, and I mean massive Shin Megami Tensei end of the world kind of Digimon, shows up, and this game once again completely challenged my expectations through the escalation that I just didn't expect. And it was shortly after this that I was told how to digivolve Digimon. If there's any question about why I would convert multiple of the same Digimon for my party, it became very clear here. When I went to check Koromon, I found that there are actually a number of paths Koromon can go down. This isn't your old Pokemon, Charmander, Charmeleon, Charizard setup. This is almost more like Fire Emblem, kind of like I said earlier, where you can get a Digimon up to a certain level, like 20 or 25, and then choose which class you want to promote it to. But in this case, there are several paths you can go down. You can even de-Digivolve if you want to go down a different path. While I'm not entirely sure what the ramifications are of the stats and what things will be, for example, digivolving a level 5 Agumon versus a level 25 Agumon, once again, this game just took a concept and blew the doors right off of it. There's so much I'll be able to dig in here, and I'm super pumped about this. Since this was a preview and I had a limited time, I went straight to making him Agumon because, you know, retro classics, am I right? But when I get my hands on this game, I'm gonna go crazy for this stuff. Oh, but it didn't stop there. Turns out, along with this, you can essentially talk to your Digimon and change and refine their personality. And this is kind of like the nature and a Pokemon game in that it impacts certain stats and you can even learn certain skills. But this time you can change it and refine it over and over again by talking to your Digimon. So again, I only scratched the surface of this one, but it seems like you can determine how you want to build out your mons, like tanks or mages, damage dealers, the works. And all of this RPG mechanic complexity packaged in such a simple, accessible, and fun format like this was just so good. Now, one last thing I'll say before jumping into part 2 was that at some point in one of the battles, my Agumon was attacked by a move called Data Crusher, and he turned into this like little pixel art version of himself. Apparently, he was crystallized and couldn't use skills, but I kind of love having a pixel art version of him, so I'm sort of hoping that there's more to this, and I don't know, maybe there's some benefits to doing this because that would be kind of cool. And all of that more or less wrapped up part 1 for this particular preview, and all I have to say is the foundation for this game was way better than I expected. But we weren't done yet. I was then thrown into a much further part of the game where I had way more Digimon to work with, and we were in the Digi world. And man, was this a treat to see. There are so many classic Digimon. We had like Kabuterimon and Greymon and Garurumon and Anjumon. It was like a nostalgia slap right in the face, and I just didn't expect it. And I got to build out my team this time and choose which Digimon I wanted to use. So I started with some of my old favorites, but after the nostalgia excitement kind of wore off, I thought about it a bit and I realized that we're in a flippin' beach area. So if I want to run through this boss fight, I need some electricity in here probably. So reluctantly, I changed my party to Sorcerermon, Leomon, and Agunimon for their elemental coverage. And then I put my favorites back in the reserves so that they'd continue to get experience because I love them and I want them with me. After a few battles, I discovered that there was still more to the battle system. Later on, you can unlock these X attacks where your Digimon come together and do extra damage after accumulating CP from battle. That, and when you have guests join you, they just pop in and do extra damage as well. So I imagine this is going to get wild at some point. I also discovered that there were these stat attachments you can get that are crazy. I'm sure they loaded them up for this particular preview specifically, but these act like equipment that boost stats significantly. significantly. And there are some that increase multiple stats, like the deadly attachment increases attack by 150 and crit by 5%, or the curse attachment increases intelligence by 250 and crit by 5%. Once again, you have my attention, Digimon. So I loaded my party up and I prepared to go rip through these enemies. Now the story of this section was pretty interesting and it definitely piqued my interest. We had a Digimon nursing a Titan who had been injured when they were attacking the village of Digimon. While they're all basically Digimon from what it looks like. I mean, the Titan was named Divermon. Seems like we're gonna have some conflict of factions in the digital world that bleeds into the real world. So Divermon, after being nursed to health, is changed by the care of his former enemy and decides that he wanted to go have a chat with his boss and clear things up. Gee, I wonder how that's gonna go. So we went and called forth Waymon. Waymon! I remember that guy. Man, they're seriously getting me with this nostalgia. And went to the bottom of the sea to find these Titans to discuss. Of course. It's a good sentiment anyway. I was then told that a magical special layer of thin film meant we could breathe underwater. Cool. Yeah, makes sense. And was off to see the wizard. And by that, I mean the shark. And destroy it with my wizard. And this took me through a small dungeon where I had to manage the currents to get to the boss. And it's a good thing I brought my electric dudes because I was totally right. Though what surprised me was finding that some of the enemies underwater were weak to fire. I don't know, maybe it was that thin layer of film or something. But as you might expect, using the electric skills, there was a chance for paralysis, showing that some of the more common status effects you expect in a JRPG setting are all present and accounted for. Submeramon then joined us to help us get through some of the currents that were previously blocking our path, and we were on our way. Also loved that Submeramon just randomly had a southern accent. That was cool.
I'm Submeramon. I'll take good care of you.
And this brought us to grumpy old Sharkmon, who, as you might expect, did not take kindly to the planned diplomacy, and decided to attack us and his former buddy. To be fair, Divermon wasn't exactly the most convincing of orators, but you know what? He did his best.
So, will you reconsider? You know, like, not attack the village.
Did you hit your head or something? You dare give me orders?
The team I chose to roll with was perfect for this one. Sorcerermon had an AoE electric attack that hit Sharkmon and all his lackeys. And then Agunamon and Leomon got to single target Sharkmon, who was, of course, weak to electricity. While my guests helped whittle down the extra bad guys. Midway through the battle, Sharkmon was charging up a new attack, which gave me a new meter to target by hitting his head. Fortunately, I took out the other Mons and could focus solely on Sharkmon to stop him from pulling off his super move. And from there, I just needed to rinse and repeat and take him down. It was fairly quick, but a very satisfying boss fight with multiple mechanics to manage. And once I took him down, the preview ended with a simple yet provocative question. Why are we doing all this? Listen, folks, Digimon Time Stranger was not a game I expected to be on my list for the end of the year games I'm excited to buy. There's already so many great things coming. It's absolutely wild. But this preview absolutely sold me on it. They found this beautiful balance of nostalgia, in-depth mechanics, accessibility, and story intrigue. And now this one is up there on the list. And the coolest thing is that there is a demo dropping on September 11th for all of you to check out. And I would highly recommend that you check this one out at some point and look forward to its release on October 3rd for PS5 and Xbox. Bandai, if you release this on the Switch 2 later, please don't make this a keycard. Anyway, what do you guys think about all this? Are you as excited as I am? Let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't seen the other games I got to check out at PAX, look no further than here. I've got one more coming on PAX, and then back to our regularly scheduled content. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Later.